Without further ado, allow me to introduce Rob Malpelli. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Rob and have attended his great webinars and his conferences before. So, Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome to everyone. And I know it's the end of a really busy day. It's a pupil-free day, and lots of planning for tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and the next 5 weeks. So, thank you for giving up half an hour, 40 minutes of your time. What Senga's asked me to do was to talk about the book, not so much as an author, but probably more as an educator and as a teacher. And that's what I've actually tried to do in summarising in the presentation. And I suppose that's what I really love about the new Fit for Life resources that make it one of my favourite resources that I can use with my my Year 7 to 10 HPE classes. And as you're aware, during the remote learning, it's been really hard to do a lot of prep with students. In some cases, impossible. But we've really been able to focus on the H part in the HPE, and that's why I'm really passionate about tonight's presentation. So thank you again. Without further ado, we'll get into it. So Sam's just giving me control of the so basically the new Fit for Life resources have been specifically written for the Victorian curriculum, and as sort of the one of the authors that oversaw the project, I really made sure that each of the authors, which come from all over Australia, predominantly from our own state, Victoria, but they're really aware of what the Victorian curriculum is and how it needs to be unpacked as educators. The next thing is that Cengage did a whole lot of staff surveys in terms of what their wish lists were, in terms of what they wanted in a resource. And the new Fit for Life series has been updated with a lot of those additional features that teachers wanted. They wanted, for example, students to be more able to read, to interpret and use graphical information. So that's one of the features in the new Fit for Life resources. But there's been a huge emphasis on student wellbeing as well. And something that I'm really proud of is the partnership that we've been able to broker with an organisation called Mood Mission, which is overseen by Dr. David Baker, and also with Smiling Minds, who I'm sure you're aware of Smiling Mind and how you can actually incorporate that into not only your teaching of health and PE, but you can incorporate that more broadly. Many of us are tutors or form teachers. Pastoral care is another area where you can use that particular resource. One of the great things that I like using the Fit for Life series is that there's multiple entry points for students. So if students are very visual, there's a lot of visual aspects that occur throughout all the different chapters. If students are more auditory, there's a lot of auditory quizzes that they can actually listen to and respond to. So there's lots and lots of different entry levels. And there's also different levels. If you think about Bloom's taxonomy, there's lots of different levels that we want to engage students at. So from the really, I suppose, a basic entry level where students can feel that they do understand the ideas and the concepts that are related to health, all the way through to some of the more extended type skills that we are trying to get students to actually do. Rather than just have the sort of the questions at the end of chapters, which is very sort of, I suppose, yesterday in terms of using student resources, there's multiple feedback and assessment options throughout each of the chapters. You can look at students' prior understanding of certain concepts, and my focus is on chapter 3, and I know that's one of the sample chapters you might be able to access. But there's multiple feedback points that you can provide students with throughout, and there's multiple assessment options throughout each of the chapters as well. One of your wish list items, which we sort of highlighted early on in the piece that informed our writing, was that there's lots of real world examples throughout, so students can make those links to real world examples within their schools, within their communities, and within the wider sort of world that they find themselves being members of. And there's review, reflect and extend activities that are there throughout each of the chapters. And today's presentation will be broken up into each of those sort of key areas there. And most importantly, there's extensive teacher support at the moment. There's some digital teacher resources that are being fine-tuned, and that I'll certainly talk about how you can actually use those. It's really important to have I suppose, a resource that's really engaging and that students really love using. But it's also important that we know how to use that to its full extent, and that's where the teacher support really comes into play. So it has been specifically written for the Victorian curriculum, and there's two key principles that I ensured each of the writing team really understood and embedded all of their sort of design of their chapters with. That basically students need to know how H and PE, or health and PE, actually enhances their health, safety and well-being, and how it also enables them to become much more active within their communities. And VCAR have got that clearly spelt out. The second key underlining principle was that it actually enables students to become more critical in their ability to use information, so not to basically accept things on face value, and then to develop some of those what we call soft skills, which are really important to be able to analyse, to apply, to appraise the knowledge, both in the health and in their movement field. So those two key underlining principles were really evident throughout the writing team's processes. And I know that for some of you who are teaching HPE for the first time, or you've actually started to think more explicitly about what I need to include in my classes or in my teaching, it's really important that we develop knowledge and skills that enable students to do those three key things: to assess, evaluate and synthesize information, and to then use that to take positive and protective behaviours; to develop personal, social and cognitive skills that are really important as well. And the highlight in that second bullet point is to create a sense of personal identity and well-being. And the respectful relationships, which a lot of you are using, that the Department of Education have provided schools with, has certainly been addressed in each of the chapters in the Fit for Life series. And the last one is really to think about how students they're working in a sort of their school community locally, how they're working within the broader community, and how they very much are global citizens. HP is divided into those basic two key strands. The left-hand strand, you can see there is the personal, social and community health, which is the H part of HPE. And the right-hand side, for want of a better explanation, is what we do in our practical classes. On the right-hand side, we've found that really challenging during remote and distance learning. The left-hand column is something that we've really been able to address and to engage our classes with, our 7, 8, 9 and 10 classes with. So being healthy, safe and active is really important. Being able to interact and communicate for health and well-being, and being able to be healthy as part of a broader active community is also really important. So we have those two underlying principles, and this sort of unpacks those a little bit. So the left-hand column is informed how we put together each of the chapters. This is from the VCAR, I suppose, document, which a lot of you would have used when you've actually thought about, well, what do I do with my year 7s, or what do the year 9s need to cover whilst they're actually going through year 9 HPE? What do we need to actually put into our curriculum documents to enable us to actually address the Victorian curriculum, and what's actually been, I suppose, mandated by VCAR for us to teach? So this is really important that we've actually got those key principles and those key underpinnings from VCAR, and I can assure you that they've been addressed in each of the 10 chapters in each of the different Fit for Life series. So there has been, as I said, a big emphasis on student wellbeing, and these occur pretty regularly throughout each of the chapters. So the chapter that I'm going to be using as my reference point is chapter 3. It's Healthy and Active Communities. And basically there is 3 activities in that particular chapter, 2 from Moon Vision and 1 from Smiling Mind. And they occur throughout the rest of the chapters as well. So here's an actual activity that gets students to, it's from Mood Mission, as I said, from Dr. David Baker. And he it actually gets students to think about exercise as not just being important for their physical well-being, but how it's really, really important for their social and their emotional well-being as well. So in this particular case, it gets students to find a quiet spot where they can actually perform a plank, and then it gets them to do that particular activity, and it gets them to then try and focus in mindfully as to what's actually occurring through their body. So mood mission is something that you may not have heard about a lot, but it's something very similar to Smiling Mind that I think within the next 6-12 months, a lot of schools would have certainly known about mood mission and Smiling Mind. And it's all underpinned again by that positive psychology that's starting to find its way into a lot of different educational settings. Smiling Mind, I'm sure that you are more possibly familiar with than mood mission. And again, it simply gets students to download the app. It's a free app, and it gets students to actually do this particular meditation. And it gets students to do the meditation tasks from Smiling Mind regularly. It gets them to do them on Monday through to Friday, how they felt before the meditation, how they felt after the meditation, what they liked and what they actually found challenging. Now, again, students can do this personally and individually, and they can then come back and share. I know that that's what I did with my classes when I was actually trialing this particular activity. So it's amazing how many students find it really, really difficult to engage in mindfulness activities, such as meditation, but then with a little bit of assistance, a little bit of shared information from their peers and from the rest of the teaching staff, that they can actually do that really, really effectively. So there's a couple of examples of student wellbeing and mindfulness activities that occur throughout the whole series. As a tutor and involved with pastoral care, these are activities that I would do. We used to have what we call Wellness Wednesdays. And on Wednesday, we used to focus on mindfulness activities. And this is pretty much aside from the HPE program. So what I found was that I was actually taking my Fit for Life books across to my tutor group, to my pastoral care session, and using a lot of the mindfulness activities during those sessions. So it's almost like I had a raft of activities that just increased my toolkit that I could actually use for that. As I said, there's multiple entry levels, and I found that there's such a big range of student interests, student abilities, and where students are sort of at in terms of their understanding of health concepts, that it's really important they've got multiple entry points for students. And one of those new things with the new series is that there's a lot of videos that occur throughout. And I'm going to ask Sam if you can actually play this video. So this, the same way that you might, the groundwork you might do as a health educator is that you find a video on the internet, you then play it to your class, you ask your students to play it, and that then forms the basis of discussion, or it forms the basis of an activity you then do in class. I'll just show you an example of some of those videos that occur throughout the series. So Sam, if you could run with that, please.
Okay, I'm just going to press play on this video.
Yep.
We have tested it, and it sound has been working. Everything has been working.
Zoom has a little bit of a lag, so
yeah. If anyone has any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. But I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, please do give us some feedback, because a lot of work and a lot of love has gone into these animations, and they do appear throughout both books.
The Australian Government has developed evidence-based guidelines for physical activity for young people. Let's take a look at them. The guidelines cover 3 areas of recommendations: physical activity, sedentary behaviour, and sleep. The guidelines advise young people to undertake 60 minutes or more of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day. Strength activities should be incorporated at least 3 days a week. Can you guess how many young people meet this guideline? Only 8% complete 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity every day. Sedentary behaviour refers to the time you spend sitting and not moving much, such as when you watch TV or sit in class at school. The Australian 24-hour movement guidelines recommend no more than 2 hours of recreational screen time every day, but only 20% of young people aged 13 to 17 meet this guideline. Lack of sleep is linked to negative health conditions. Young people aged 14 to 17 should be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. They should also practice sleep hygiene, which means maintaining good habits to help you sleep better. Following these evidence-based guidelines in our daily routine around exercise, sedentary behaviour, and sleep can make a big difference to our health, including our life expectancy and likelihood of disease.
Okay. The video you just saw is a good example of something that's pretty quick, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Students actually play it, they get some critical information, and that forms the basis for either an activity in class, or it forms a basis for some discussion points within that. So there's other entry points. For example, it gets students to actually look at websites, reputable websites. So the Heart Foundation, for example, we're getting students to go to the data and statistics at the Heart Foundation website, and they then have to unpack some of the information there. So, you know, we go from an entry level where students simply watch a video to getting them to do something in terms of data analysis, which is something that teachers sort of said that they wanted to do. Another one that's really, really important is that we actually, there's a lot of activities in each of the chapters that get students to discuss their findings, either with a partner in their class, or to form the basis of class discussion. So I'm trying to get students to actually become a lot more proficient, I suppose, and confident in their ability to communicate orally. And oral presentations, I think, are something that are going to be much more used all the way through to Year 12 assessment tasks. I know that you're seeing students who are producing posters now for psych and for biology, and probably for PE moving forwards, but you're also seeing a lot more oral presentations there. So the end of a lot of sections, we're getting students to actually hold discussion points with their classmates there. Okay, so this is another activity, as I said, that this is a face-to-face activity. We actually get the class to do a brainstorm activity, things that they actually consider what physical activity actually is made up of. And most students think that the sports they play at school or during PE or on the weekend is physical activity. Gets them to think about different forms of physical activity. Okay, so as I said, there's multiple entry points, and thanks Amy, I can see your chat. Good that you're back. This is an example from the student workbook, and essentially it actually gets students to do a lot of self-analysis and self-reflection. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is personal. So students actually fill in a survey in terms of their physical health, their social health, their sleep health, and it comes up with a rating, and it forms really, really great basis for discussion, that they can then look that their sleep might be inadequate. It might be that socially they need to increase their social health, etc. So, or their physical health. So this is a classic example of no right or wrong answer. It's what is personal, and students doing that sort of personal check-in. Okay, this is something that I also like, that basically, and a lot of you would do the same as I do. Basically, you're testing for student understanding and student previous, what they bring to the table, essentially. So essentially, what they think physical activity means, what they think sedentary behaviour means, what they think intensity means. So they put down a bit of what they know. They then go back to their text and what the actual textbook says, and then they actually have to use it in a sentence. So getting students to become familiar, I suppose, with the language that's around the key knowledge that's presented in the books is really, really, and again, there's no right or wrong here. It's personally what they put down. So there's some good entry points there for students, and multiple entry points are really, really important. Okay, hopefully we don't have a fallout. This is something that is very new, and again, at the start of each key content area, and each chapter might have 5 or 6 key content areas that need to be covered according to VCAR. So essentially what happens is that students go along and they complete this quiz. They get immediate feedback. It shows them whether their response is correct. If they put down an incorrect response, it actually shows them what the correct response is. So then there's learning that occurs just in time or immediately as they do it. It then allows you as a teacher to say, okay, well, most of my class have got a really good understanding of this particular content area. We can go through this a lot quicker and we can do a lot more extension work, or similarly it can be the opposite. So Sam, are you able to put up a quiz, please? Hope, fingers crossed, we don't drop out. Whilst we're waiting for Sam to put the quiz up, you see that there's different assessment options. There certainly is. Here we go. So I'll actually, if I can actually start the quiz. So which of the following is incidental physical activity? And I'll put down working as landscape gardener and submit. And okay, you can see that that's correct. I go on to the next question, and I'll actually deliberately, which of the following is an example of active transportation? I'll deliberately say catching a bus to school and submit. And riding a bike is active transportation, catching a bus to school. So it allows students to then have a discussion with the class, if the class are doing this as a group, or with the person next to them, etc. So I'll do one more. So participation in regular physical activity can improve which of the following? It's all of the above. It's emotional, cardiovascular, and cognitive function. And I'll submit, etc. This is another graph interpretation. Graph understanding is really, really important. So essentially here I'm going to, what does the graph show? That females are more active than males, deliberately chosen the wrong response. It actually shows the right response, and it actually shows what the percentage is. And these are the latest figures, and this is another real benefit of the rewrite, is that we've got the latest and most current sort of data sets available. So Sam, if you can go back to the PowerPoint now. So these quizzes are available in each of the chapters, and as I said, they occur before each of the key content areas. So each chapter might have, there's a minimum of 3 quizzes per chapter, all the way up to 5 quizzes. So we've just done that one. I'll go through to the end, and I think all of you are familiar with chapter review questions. So chapter review questions are nothing new, but again, the real benefit is that they're actually linked to the workbook, the student workbook activities. You can actually see them down the left-hand column there where my cursor is. You can see worksheet 3.12. You can see a quiz that relates to question 3. So it's integrating the whole chapter basically in that snapshot at the end in terms of the chapter review. So as I said, there's plenty of real-world examples. This particular activity gets students to actually do physical activity, to try and memorize something, do physical activity, and then try and repeat what they've memorized, versus simply trying to memorize something without doing physical activity. So we're trying to get students up and about as much as possible, not just during the PE part or the practical part of the course, but certainly during the health part of the course as well. So there's lots of activities that students can really relate to as well. Fast facts occur throughout the books as well. So summary, little snippets that really students can look at. Their eyes go to it straight away, and it informs them in terms of their discussion or the work that you want them to complete throughout that particular class itself as well. The wish list that Cengage found teachers wanted, they wanted students to do a lot more investigation. They wanted students not so much to simply read and answer questions. They wanted students to go out and collect information themselves, and that information could be them doing an internet search, or them going out and surveying their classmates or their peers in a different setting, etc. So what you'll see is there's a lot of investigations in the Fit for Life series where it's actually like a lab. There's a purpose to the investigation, there's the method that is undertaken, and then there's some great discussion points that actually lead students to actually tick off those key parts that are embedded in the VCAR curriculum. So review, reflect, and extend activities occur throughout each of the chapters. Review is fairly much the lower order type entry. The reflect is getting students to apply a lot of what they've done to their own personal experiences and their school experiences. And the extend is that higher order sort of thinking that gets students to think about, well, what does it really mean, and how can I take this beyond the classroom? So you can see the bottom one there that actually talks about positive psychology and growth mindset that's starting to be embedded in a lot of HPE learnings that are going on in schools. It actually gets students to look at the similarities and the differences between positive psychology and growth mindset. So again, getting them to compare, to contrast those higher order skills that are really, really important. As I said, this is probably the last one of those, the second last slide that I'll have, but there is extensive teacher support, and I'll actually get, you'll find out a little bit more about this, but essentially there's a comprehensive curriculum grid that's included at the beginning of each chapter. It actually allows you to see what journey you're taking the students through. There's clear links between the focus area, the strands and the sub-strands in the curriculum that's been put down by VCAR. The content descriptors in the Victorian curriculum are really, really explicit, and as are the elaborations. So what you'll find in the digital resources is something a little bit like what you see in front. You'll see the strand and the sub-strand, and we spoke about those earlier. You'll see a content descriptor, and that will be mirrored at the start of each chapter. And then you'll see an elaboration, and you'll actually see where in the series or in the textbook or workbook that can actually be found. So please feel assured that you're essentially addressing the Victorian curriculum in its entirety by using the Fit for Life series. So something else that you'll actually see, and here's I suppose an expanded view of what you'll actually see. So when you're actually looking at personal, social, and community health, being healthy, safe, and active is the strand, and what you'll see is there's barriers and in terms of seeking support. So what are the barriers in terms of students being able to seek support? And you'll see the activities and the relevant page reference, and in the workbook you'll also see the different activities. Now, you don't have to do each and every one of those activities, but they certainly are recommended, and there's a whole range of extension activities that occur throughout each of the chapters. So in a snapshot, I've tried to present you why I love using the Fit for Life resources. Let me assure you that my students have really, really engaged with it. As I said, I take it to my tutor group, my pastoral care group. I do a lot of the mindfulness activities in that particular setting, outside HPE teaching, etc. And apart from that little hiccup, I know that we're sort of at time, but please, I'd like to introduce now Anne-Marie Mosley, who is a senior educational consultant with Cengage, and she'll take you through some of the additional teacher resources that accompany the Fit for Life series, and then we'll go back to Sam, and we'll have a look at some of the questions that have been popping up throughout the presentation. So in a snapshot, thank you so much, and I'll hand over to Anne-Marie Mosley now.
Thank you, Rob, for that powerful and engaging presentation. I think we can all take something from that we could bring into our lives about time off screen and movement and better quality sleep, yeah, and all those good things. So I congratulate you on bringing this fabulous content to schools. Now I'm going to give you a brief overview, give everyone a brief overview of what to expect from the Nelsonette teacher resources. So the Nelsonette, your bookshelf will look something like this. So there'll be an ebook, a tab with an ebook, and then there will be a tab with resources. Next slide, Sam, please. So the Nelsonette ebook is page faithful to the book. It's fully interactive version of the printed book with hotspots linking you to web links, audio and video content. So it's highly interactive content. I guess when we talk to teachers in the development of this, one of the first things they were asking for was more interactive content to engage students in the classroom, and that we have certainly delivered. The resources are also really easy and accessible to use. So the student book has a code in the back of the book, so the students have everything they need. You also have the standard annotation features, so like adding highlights, notes, and annotations. Next slide, Sam. So just a bit of an overview. Rob has kind of painted the picture of the Nelsonette interactive resources. Just going back over what's available for the student, we've got videos, we've got animations, case studies, and interviews. So lots of relevant, up-to-date content, and even guided mindfulness. We've got quizzes pre and post. We've got web links that are all current and up to date. We've got lots of worksheets for you to reference. So basically, we've taken a lot of the work out of developing the content. So everything's quick and easy at the students' fingertips. And again, lots of content to help you engage them in the classroom. Let's have a look at the teacher resources. So the teacher resources, you get everything the student gets. In addition to that, you get everything to support you in delivering this powerful content in the classroom. So you get teaching plans, syllabus mapping, the respectful relationship mapping, project-based learning outcomes, assessment guide, and of course, all critically, the answers. So having done all this work for you, this will enable you to have more time for other things like surfing, swimming, and doing the things you love. So it also means that as a faculty, you can have consistency across your faculty. So if you're off on camp, somebody else can easily pick up from chapter 3 and run with it from there. So now, leading on from that, we'll just have a quick look at what's involved with creating a teacher account and then requesting access to a title. So we provide the Nelsonette teacher resources complementary to adopting schools. So when you confirm your adoption with your school consultant, you can go in and create a teacher account. Many of you will already have teacher accounts, given that you're using some of our other resources. The process around creating a teacher account is really easy. So you just simply go into nelsonette.com.au, create the account, a button on the menu bar, select teacher, enter your details, and click register. It's that easy. Next slide. So requesting title access. So again, this is when you're requesting the teacher resources to support the student book. So you log on to Nelsonette account, select the request a title button from the menu bar. Then you simply enter the title of the book or it'll populate for you. In the adoption number, this gets people every time. So the adoption number means the estimate of the number of students who are taking the class. Enter your bookseller name, whoever's handling your book list. Remember to check your school details. And then the last step, request a title. That request comes through to a school consultant, which your school consultant is either myself, Kim Lowe, or Gillian Lim. If you don't know who your school consultant is, you can go on to Cengage Secondary, scroll down to the bottom of the page, find your consultant, and it'll tell you who your consultant is. So the consultant basically approves your request, and then your bookshelf is updated with everything you need within 24 to 48 hours. Next slide. So I guess purchasing options, there's a range of options available to you. So basically there's an option to suit every budget. And I guess I'd like to say that, you know, these resources are used over 2 years. We have a value pack, which is $82.95. So that's student book and digital workbook, and you get the complimentary teacher access. So basically that's the works. You can get the student book as a standalone with an access code in the back of the book, valid for 26 months for $70.95, or a workbook for $31.95, or even a digital code for $28.95. And I guess just you can get free Nelsonet teacher access, free student books for teachers when you booklist the student book or the value pack. And lastly, next slide. More, so I guess we, the education consultants, are here to support you, to assist you with any queries, provide you with additional information. We can provide inspection copies, proof copies, online presentations, which we're all getting very good at, thanks to COVID-19, and printed catalogues. So the email address provided, if you have any queries about today's presentation outside of the chat conversation, you can email that address and they'll be sent to the appropriate person. So on that happy note, that's it from me, and thank you. Over to you, Sam.
Sam, you can wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks so much to Rob and Anne-Marie there, and thank you to you all for persevering through that little hiccup and jumping back on board with us. We will just finish going through the chat and see if there's any questions that haven't been answered. And also, many of you will be wanting to know when these are available, and so the series will be available in October. So you'll be able to have it in your hands in October.
So there's been lots of questions regarding the pre-tests. So is there an indication where they appear in the, are they in the indication in the printed book, or are they only available online?
Yeah, so I can quickly show you where.
And then just on top, you know, we've got more questions about the quizzes. So the quizzes must have really struck a really good note, which is fantastic. Do teachers get a copy of the student answers, or is it more of a tool for students to assess their own understanding?
So with the quizzes, you know, they can be used for students to assess their own understanding. They will get a PDF with their results on, and obviously they get immediate feedback as they do each question, and then when they finished each quiz, there's a report that they save as a PDF. So that can be for the students' own records and their own files, or they can send that to their teacher, and their teacher can then have that visibility as to what is going on for their students. Obviously, visible learning is a really big thing with John Hattie and all that goes around that. So yeah, you can do it both ways, really.
So while
Sorry,
you're
Sam.
looking for that, Sam, there's a good question here for Rob.
Yep.
Do any of the descriptors indicate links to VCE in the Year 10 book?
Yeah, I was just going to, thanks, Simone. I was just going to respond to Warren's. Warren had a comment and a question. I know that you're head of health, Warren, and I'd agree with you. It's great to see Smiling Mind and Mood Mission included. We haven't put links to any of the VCE descriptors, so it's purely what VCAR have got. And it's almost like VCAR have got two sets of documents, one for 7 to 10 and one for 11 and 12. So to answer your question, Warren, there's no direct links to the VCE from the Year 10 book. Sam, you've got what you want? Yep.
Yeah, so I've just got on the screen now, if you'd like to have a look. You can see that there's a quiz icon here, and this appears at the start of every chapter. So every chapter across both student books, there is a pre-test quiz. And then there are other quiz icons that appear at the end of relevant sections throughout both books. So I'd say, sometimes it's not relevant to have a quiz at the end of a major heading, but throughout the book, where relevant, we do have quizzes across both student books.
And can I say, Sam, that some of the chapters lend themselves more to quizzes than others. For example, chapter 7, which I wrote, is on essentially outdoor education and outdoor experiences. I've actually put less quizzes in that chapter than I have in chapter 3, which is the one that I sort of demonstrated during today's presentation. So, but regardless, there's a minimum of 3 quizzes in each chapter. Some of them have got up to 5 or 6 quizzes that occur throughout the chapters.
Okay, we have a question just regarding what's the purpose of the workbook in relation to the student book?
Yeah, so as you can see, we've got the student book here, a very content-rich, lots of activities, as Rob mentioned. Students can have many different entry points, many different types of activities covering all of the curriculum descriptors. And then the workbook, I can show some pages from a workbook if you bear with me.
Can I just chip in, Sam? Sorry. Let me take you to Health and PE 15 years ago, where you had a textbook, which is the student book, and you then had to run off a whole lot of photocopies, worksheets, assignments that students needed to complete. The Fit for Life series, the student workbook, essentially keeps all of that together, and it follows students for 2 years. So the workbook actually takes all that photocopying, all that preparation that teachers traditionally would do, and puts it into one place. So that's what I see the workbook as being a real strength of the workbook.
The workbook also enables them to practice and consolidate some
Yes.
of, yeah.
If you can imagine it being almost like a fill-in section that students actually complete their written responses. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of face-to-face activities that students don't record, but the workbook actually is where students physically record a lot of their experiences, their answers, their investigation, the finding of their investigation. That's what the workbook is essentially used for, and it keeps everything together. So, and as I said, it follows students for 2 years, which is really, really useful as well.
All right, here we go. So this is the workbook. So self-contained worksheets, essentially covering the same topics, but providing another way of covering the curriculum content. So very much complements the student book content.
Yeah.
and obviously there are icons in the student book that relate to the workbook, and in the workbook that relate to the student book. So it's really easy to kind of cross-reference between the two, and use the whole product suite in a kind of holistic fashion.
I think that's sort of it. I've been replying to people directly.
Yeah, I've seen your responses.
But I would say if anyone does have any questions that they feel are unanswered, feel free to contact the sales team via that email address that was in the PowerPoint, and we will make sure we get back to you directly. You know, we'll have a one-to-one Zoom meeting with you and work out what's best for your school. We've had lots of discussions just regarding one that they're using the books across year 7 to 10 and not sure where to bring in the new edition. I would personally say if you have students who you could get your year 7s to continue to use the current edition in year 8 and get the new edition book listed in year 7 and year 9 so that they can take it through to year 10.
Yep.
I think we've covered everything. We do not provide electronic versions of workbooks. As you would understand, they are workbooks. They're write-in. They're not really digital. We'd much prefer to have physical workbooks than digital workbooks. At this point, I would just like to say thank you to everyone who stayed with us. It's fantastic. The 71 people who started with us in the first sitting continued with us. So thank you very much. And I'd just like to thank Rob, Anne-Marie and Sam. It was a great presentation, and we look forward to talking with you all and working out what's best for you and your school. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.